With us in studio, I want to introduce him to you. His name is Dave Ebert. Did I say your last name correct?
That is correct. I give you 2 thumbs up.
Okay, I was like, is it going to be an Ebert? And I just got it wrong. Nope, Dave Ebert. He's the co-founder of Ha Ha Men. If you haven't heard of them, they're an improv and comedy sketch team for his glory. Dave, what does that mean? Your comedy sketch team for his glory? Give me a 30-second overview of your comedy work.
Basically, Ha Ha Men is a group of believing Christians. We believe in the Bible, and we believe that using comedy, because in Ecclesiastes, Solomon talked about there's a time for everything. There's a time to cry. There's also a time to laugh. And the Bible also teaches that laughter is the best medicine. It's great for your heart. So we use comedy as a way to break down barriers. We use comedy as a way to bring people together, because you're never alone when you're laughing with a group. And no matter how lonely you may come in walking to a theater, if you're laughing with people, you've suddenly identified with a group of people that you didn't know before, and now you're not so alone. So we use the comedy as a way to bring people together. I like to say that music is a wonderful way to worship God. And Ha Ha Men, our song is the sound of God's people united in laughter.
Oh, I love that. But you are a funny guy. Your team is really, really funny. So you use a lot of humor. You laugh a lot. But there's a side to your story. How did God use humor in kind of to help heal you? Let's go back in a little bit of ways in your story.
Sure. For much of my life, I dealt with severe depression, and my way of coping was to make sure nobody knew about it. I didn't want anyone to know where I was emotionally or spiritually. I had accepted Christ the summer before my 6th grade year, but really didn't pursue any kind of relationship. And because I kind of walked away pursuing fulfillment in everything else, it built into a depression where I did not want anyone to know what I felt. So I used humor as a defense mechanism.
Now, talk a little bit, and as comfortable as you feel delving into this, what depression kind of takes on a lot of different forms and looks different in different people's lives. What did that feel like for you?
For me, it was just this feeling of worthlessness, that my value was only dependent on whether or not I was doing something for somebody, or serving somebody, or making somebody laugh or feel good. My depression was just this weight of feeling worthless and feeling like my life was a mistake, that nobody wanted me, and it was just this vicious cycle of where I would feel that way, and then I would look for every opportunity to see that feeling confirmed. I would look for justification for how I felt, which made me feel even worse. And it was literally this cloud, or it's more of being in water, and just every so often I'm sitting there, standing on the rocks, and I'd slip and go underneath the surface. And I could never get much above the surface. And as hard as I tried to swim, as hard as I tried to float or tread water, I would keep slipping under the surface. And, there were times that I wanted to stay below the surface and just give up and take that last ultimate step.
Were you suicidal?
Yes, I was. I really didn't think about. I started thinking about suicide when I was a junior in high school, and then it really just, once I started thinking, it was like the levee broke, and it was a constant battle of, well, how do I do it? Do I really want to do it? If I do, what am I leaving behind? Yeah. And I wrestled with thoughts of, how do I do it and not leave people hurt? Because I knew that it would hurt people, but I also wanted my own pain to end.
Mm-hmm. And we want to give a little ear's warning here.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, this is an important topic. If you're not aware, September is National Suicide Prevention Month. We want to always be careful in how we speak, but we want to speak honestly and candidly. So we will give a little ear's warning. If you have young kiddos in the car and you're headed to school, this may be a good time to switch it off or to put in a CD. But important to talk about. How long, Dave, did this go on for you?
So I estimate that I started really being depressed probably around 14 or 15 years old, and it didn't really break until I was I was 32, so I mean, pretty much half of my life. And the depression didn't end completely, because every once in a while you still deal with it, because it's like an injury that you can overcome. You're doing well, but there are some scars, and like this morning and other times, the enemy, because there is an enemy, and that's one of the things that I think the church doesn't do well enough, is recognize that there is really an enemy that's out to maim us. And the enemy knows where those scars are, and he knows how to push them. And every once in a while it kind of flares up, and you get upset, and then you just have to fully turn it over to God. Even on the way here, I was like, man, this is so awesome. I get to hang out with Karl and Crew, and now I'm running late. And so it was an attack from the enemy. And so just going back to the depression, it didn't end, or the power was broken in January of 2013. I was on my way to work, and I was literally at this point in my life where I was thinking about going back to God and quote unquote trying it out, 30-day free trial type thing. And I was warming up to that idea, but I was also still wrestling with suicide. So I was literally at this peak of a mountain where one side was I could take my life, or one side was I could give my life. And on my way to work, I was running late, as usual. It's kind of my character sometimes. There's these two kids from a Bible college. No reason for them to be in that neighborhood, because there's really not a high population.
Okay, we're going to hit the pause button right
Okay.
there. Yeah, I'm going to make you wait. There's another part of this story. What happened? Those two people from a Bible college?
Mm-hmm.
What was that conversation like? How did God use that in Dave's life? We'll tell you the full story coming up. Driving, and he encounters a couple guys from Bible college. This is Karl and Crew Mornings. We are in the middle of a conversation with our guest today, Dave Ebert. He's the co-founder of Ha Ha Men. They're an improv and clean comedy sketch team. They do a lot in the western suburbs, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And very, very talented comedy group. And we're talking about his own personal battle with depression. It is September, and it was this National Suicide Prevention Month, and we are getting candid with you, talking about this issue that has been in the news a lot lately.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave, our guest, you reached that point of despair where you did not want to live anymore. Let's talk about that turning point where you encountered these two Bible students.
Yeah, so it's January 2013, and I'm on my way to work. And I lived in a place of uptown Beckley, West Virginia, where this part of town had maybe 200 people living in that neck of the woods. So there's really not a high requirement for corner witnessing. But God sent these two kids from a Bible college out to the corner next to my apartment building, and they were like, "Hey, can we pray for you? How are you doing?" The young on fire for God kids, and I was running late, and I kind of blew them off. They handed me a tract, one of those little Christian comic book things, and I blew them off, and I said, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I pray, I'm good, which at that point I wasn't, but I just had to get rid of them. And but that night I got back to my apartment, and I realized, I got the message, God. Okay, you're reaching out to me. So I popped open the Purpose-Driven Life, which I'd had on my bookshelf for several years, and then I also took the challenge of reading the King James Bible, starting in Genesis and trying to read straight through the Old Testament. And so that was the beginning of my turn back to God, and that's when he led me from Beckley, West Virginia to Chicago, to the hub of improv and sketch, to use the abilities that he developed in me. Because I used to use humor as a way to hide who I was and how I felt, but now I'm using it to reveal who he is and his love for me. And that's where Ha Ha Men was born out of, and that's why we do the comedy, and that's it was God reaching out to me nonstop. I mean, I look back through, and it's literally the story of the footprints, where you think, like, there's only one set of footprints back there, and God's like, that's where I was carrying you, bro.
Carrying you all along. Dave Ebert, our guest this morning, do you feel like how was God pursuing you even through those 15 years battling depression? Were there glimpses of him trying to get your attention?
There were, not in the moment. There were a lot of moments where, I always believed that there was a God. I just believed that it wasn't for me. That, like, I was the exception to the rule of he loves everybody except Dave. Mm-hmm. Dave is different. Dave is weird. Dave isn't good looking or whatever. And so I always thought, well, yeah, that works for everybody else, but God's not for me because he doesn't want me. Nobody wants Dave unless I can make you laugh, and then once the laughter stops, let's move on and leave Dave behind. So I personified God as like everybody else I felt in my life at that point.
Wow. As someone who would reject you, someone who didn't really want to know the real you.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so I put up all these walls, and I knew he was there, and there were times when I say it as part of my testimony, not to boast, but there were times I cursed him, and I would, just say, God, just leave me alone. Stop getting in the way of my life, because, things would happen, and it would be a disappointment. And I would literally be mad at him. And one of those examples of me being mad, which actually is how God saved my life at one point, is he knew how to play with my, not to play with, but he knew what I needed. Yeah. There was one night I was driving home like 3 a.m. after work, and I lived in the mountains of West Virginia, and there are several sharp curves where if you go straight, you end up down a ravine, but you have to turn right to stay on the road. I was by myself, no traffic for miles, and I just sat there and said, God, I could do this. If I put my foot to the floor, everyone will think I fall asleep, and nobody will think that I did it. I need you to give me a reason not to. And many testimonies involve some sort of great revelation, some sort of miracle. God in that moment was almost painfully silent. And in that moment, instead of committing suicide, I got mad. I got mad at God. And I went home angry with God. And I went home wondering why God didn't do anything. And then looking back, I realized he did. I went home mad, but I went home because God knew what I needed in that moment to drive home instead of drive off that cliff. And it's one of those things where God doesn't fit in a box. God is so big and so powerful. He gives you what you need when you need it. You just have to be willing to listen. And, there he sacrificed himself to let me be mad at him so that I would continue and I would go home. And it's just amazing how much he does for us that we never see, we never realize. And there's so much in my testimony I know that I missed because I didn't pay attention in the moment. But now looking back, it's like, wow, God was there.
Dave, we just have a minute or two left. What would you say to the person who is in that place right now, who has maybe turned their back on God, or maybe not, but is just in a pit of despair and wondering, is it always going to be this way? I want you to speak directly to that person right now.
Sure. And I'm glad you asked, because once I confirmed that I would be coming back up, is I've had this image of somebody sitting right now listening, sitting on the corner of their bed, trying to determine whether or not they actually want to walk out of the room, go to work or go to school. And I'm talking to that person. I'm also talking to the student that may be going to high school that's been bullied. I'm talking to the people that have felt like there's nothing going for them. All I can say is take one more breath, take one more step, live one more day, and then tomorrow do it again. And then the next day do it again, because God loves you and he pursues you. It's a great song by Corey Asbury. He kicks down every door. He pursues you. He goes after you and leaves the 99 because he wants you. You are the lamb that he puts on his shoulder and proudly brings home. And there is nothing that he won't do to bring you to him. Jesus is the ultimate firefighter. He will meet you where you are in that fire. He won't leave you there. He will carry you. You just trust in him and know that God has a plan and that there is nothing that he won't redeem. All the pain, all the struggles that I've been through, you've mentioned it, and Carl's mentioned it before, it's called sacred scars. These scars of the past hurts that God redeems, that God cashes in and turns into diamonds, into value. And that's what he's done with me with humor. For other people, there's 1,000,001 spiritual gifts that God can use those scars and use them to help other people, to reach other people. Because for every person that has a testimony, there's 10,000 that need to hear it so that they can come and they can know that God is there, that God is real. And I just encourage you, again, take that next breath, take that next step. Find a Bible-believing church, a Bible-believing pastor, and get plugged in, because you're not alone. Here I am, a lot of people look at me and say, oh, you're a funny guy, there's nothing wrong with you. For many years, there was a lot wrong with me. But I put up those walls, and you look at guys like Robin Williams, who you think had it all. Anthony Bourdain, think they had it all. but inside they didn't know how to reach out. And to anybody listening, whether you're listening live today on Wednesday, or you're listening to the showcast, or you're listening on the Facebook Live video later, I encourage you, find people. Surround yourself with people that know how to love in the name of Jesus and will help you through this. Because yes, it's dark. Yes, it's painful. And you feel this vicious cycle of that I'm not worthy, or that nobody wants to be buried, or nobody wants to be burdened with me. But that's not true. Your life is so important. If God, the creator of the universe, thought you were worth dying for, who are you to disagree?
As you mentioned this song, and I feel like we really need to play this song, this Reckless Love song that you mentioned by Corey Asbury. I want you to take a listen and pray right now for God to infuse hope in your life. Great song there from Corey Asbury, Reckless Love. You heard our guest Dave Ebert mention those powerful lyrics about how God pursued him when he was battling depression, suicidal thoughts. And God is doing the same for you today. He's pursuing you. His reckless love never ends. Dave, thank you so much for your honesty, for sharing your story. We ran way over time, but totally worth it. If people want to find out more information, you have a couple of key events coming up. They can check out, you have a website, which we will put up on our Facebook page. Haha Men. What's the website?
hahamen.org.
Okay.
Exactly the way it's spelled.
Thank you for coming in this morning and for being willing to share.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me up. And Carl's back up and around. Hope the headache goes away.
Feeling good now. Go to our Facebook page, Karl and Crew Mornings, and find out more about Dave's comedy sketch team, Ha Ha Men. All right, 7:35. Let's check traffic, Diana.